Hello and welcome back to another episode of A Method to the Madness, the regularly uploaded podcast where we discuss, analyze, and otherwise ponder our favourite films and movies. I'm your host, Mitchie, and joining me as usual is Patrick.
Hello.
And this week, we're covering our first Christopher Nolan film. Have a guess which one, Pat?
Have a guess. Is it Tenet? Is that right? Did I get?
Yep. Yeah. So we've always wanted to actually do Nolan stuff, and we never kind of did it, right? I mean, we've done that video on Tenet, and that was kind of a first impressions thing. And I think our theories on the movie has developed considerably since then. But we do actually endeavor to cover all the Nolan films too. But we thought actually this one would be a good one to start off with because we've already done it. It's the most recent film from Nolan, and it kind of made then the most sense to actually pick this one.
Mm-hmm. And it's still a hot buzz going around. People are still talking about this, so
yeah. As we know, it was a clinching fucking point in the Academy Award competition, which led to me losing.
Yeah, that's right.
Tenet won 4 Best Visual Effect awards, and one of them was at the Academy Awards. So, yeah. Anyway, what do you think of this movie, Pat? Give me your first and developed impressions, because your first impressions isn't great.
Yeah, well, okay, the first time I saw this, it was in the cinema, with the horrible mix that everyone was complaining about.
Yep.
They couldn't hear the dialogue, and that was, that was really true. And, it was a Nolan film, so there was this suspense throughout it that kind of hooked me. And, Nolan goes on about, oh, well, it shouldn't really matter if you can't hear with the dialogue. You should be able to feel what's going on. They even, say that in the movie. He's like, don't try and think it, just feel it. And I'm like, dude, no, I can't. That's not how your movies especially work. You can't fucking feel 100,000 words of dialogue, anyway. So by the climax of the movie, when I was watching it in the cinema, I was pretty, not there, not in it. Even though,
pissed off.
Yeah, I was kind of pissed off actually, because the action scenes were so cool. That final battle is really, really spectacular, but I just didn't know what was going on, and it kind of pissed me off. And also, little side note, I watched it in 4DX, so the seats were moving and shit.
What?
And then they filled the cinema with halide gas during that heist scene. It was intense, man. Woke up 20 minutes later, missed a bunch of the movie. No, and then I for some reason it came out pretty quickly after it was released in cinema, on DVD. So I watched it there with the subtitles, and I understood a lot better. And I thought, it's still pretty complicated. I still didn't get 100% of it. Yep. I thought it was interesting though. And then this time, I was looking at the runtime, 2.5 hours. I was like, fuck, I just watched this. I just rewatched this recently. I was kind of dreading it. But then I started it and I immediately got hooked again.
Yeah, it's so good.
Nolan has this thing about him where every scene is so interesting. Yeah. Because everything's kind of relevant, especially in this movie, where it's all fucking plot and you have to pay attention to everything.
Yeah.
And the fun comes from deciphering it. So yeah, actually this time I had a blast. I think in terms of his filmography overall, I'd say this is top to middle shelf.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. That's fair enough. And actually, one more question: what do you think of Nolan? Because we've always talked about him, we love him. So why do you like him?
Why do I don't know. I think a lot of film goers like him because of his attachment to, cinema with a capital C kind of stuff. His philosophy on what film is and should be, I think resonates with a lot of people who, feel the same thing that Scorsese feels about, this current state of films and stuff. I don't know. I like him because this probably is a symptom of his philosophy, but the movies he makes just have this cinematic feel to it.
I completely agree.
Yeah,
that's the word.
Movies. Yeah, exactly right. Cinematic. And there's a gravity to his films that Hans Zimmer has a lot to do with that, or his scores in general. But I don't know. There's just a gravity that's so present in all of his films that just sucks you in. Yeah,
it's something about it. It just feels like obviously it's not very comedic and stuff like that. It's a very serious topic, always his films. But it really makes you it gives you goosebumps, I guess. It's kind of the idea. Yeah. Just feels like there's this epicness to everything.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
What about you?
My first impressions. Well, I just so I got my diary here from when I initially watched the movie last September or August,
Ooh.
and this is what I wrote.
Yeah.
What a visually interesting movie, but I could barely follow the plot. Lack of subtitles was exacerbated by muffled speech. I at least understood Inception ostensibly when I watched it the first time, but Tenet is far less cohesive. Practical effects are stunning, conceptually interesting, good cinematography, but the plot was confusing. I struggled to follow it and need to watch it at least 3 more times to comprehend it. And goddamn, that last sentence is so fucking correct, because now I pretty much get the movie, and I've watched it exactly 3 more times. So yeah,
Hey.
it's that is the problem with this film. It's I mean, whether you see it as a problem or it's kind of dependent on the person. But like, yeah, the first time you watch it, you just literally have no idea what's going on. It did piss me off in the cinemas. I just walked out and I'm like, man, I'm so disappointed in this. Like, I didn't fucking get it. It looked cool, sure, but I didn't really understand anything at all. And that is not good, I admit, because a movie should be reasonably comprehensible the first time you watch it. But then you watch it again and again, and it just becomes really fucking good. Like, there's something about it where there's a lot of depth to the plot where, you know, every time you watch it, there's something to be interested in. Like you said, like, you feel like it's going to be a long film, then you watch it and you just hook the whole way through. And I think, again, that is something that is, you know, should be commended too, actually, for one to be able to watch it multiple times, you know, in quick succession like that, like, and still enjoy it a lot is also a good thing. So it depends really on what your viewpoint is on this kind of thing, whether you appreciate the fact that first impressions are important or not. And I guess in terms of first impressions, Tenet is pretty garbage, I'll admit.
Yeah.
But what I like about what I like about Tenet is that it really stands apart from the rest of the Nolan films. And I can't really explain why. It's more of a feeling. Like, and I think a lot of it comes down to the score, because we don't have a Hans Zimmer score for the first time since The Prestige, actually. And this Ludwig Göransson score is just like so dynamic, so different. It's quite dark and almost like, you know, got all these kind of melancholy undertones with these kind of electronic noises and stuff. And I really like that, and it makes the film feel completely different. If you went in and watched it and you weren't told that it was a Nolan film, it might take you a long time before you figure out it is a Nolan film.
Yeah.
Aside from like the obvious,
That's the point.
You know, the aspect ratio changes and stuff like that, the things that obviously make it Nolan. There's a lot of things that don't. Like, yeah, it's good like that. It's different. It's kind of a refresher.
I'd say if I had to give a criticism of this film, it's that the kind of style is a bit bland in, like, you know, all of his films are kind of like muted in some sort of way in their aesthetics, but this one especially, it's it doesn't have much style to it, but, you know, like that wasn't really...
Okay, what do you mean by style?
I mean, like, I don't know, I feel like Inception has this style where it's like, you know, really sleek and just like cool, all these, you know, dudes in suits, you know, and this one, there are a lot of dudes in suits as well. I don't know, maybe I've just become numb to it. Maybe if I saw this, you know, before I saw Inception, I'd think the inverse about Inception, you know, but...
Yeah, I agree, yeah. I think, to me, though, that is very Nolan, to not... It's very clinical. His films don't really evoke much emotion. It evokes, like, goosebump kind of feel of cinema, but you don't feel like, oh shit, that person died, I'm really sad now. You know, you don't feel that's the thing. It's more the characters, really, where there is literally no fucking emotional connection with any of Nolan's characters in pretty much most of his films. Like, especially Tenet. Tenet's probably like the worst one for that. Like, you literally don't give a fuck about the characters whatsoever. And I think that is probably the biggest downside to this film.
Yeah.
But it is kind of his trait, though, so I kind of like, well, I'm used to that anyway from Nolan.
Yeah, and you know what bothers me is that, like, there's like a 5% effort to give some sort of like characterization to like, not character, rather like character to these characters. Like, they have a lot of characterization, you know, but they're in, like, Kat's character, her fixation on, like, her son's well-being is just like it's kind of a joke, really. Like,
it's not, you can't take it seriously, can you?
There's this line where, like, Neil's like, oh yeah, everything that's ever existed is gonna get destroyed, and she goes, including my son. And it's like, yeah, that is a part of everything that's ever existed.
I that was exactly what my mind shot to too. And when she said that, I couldn't even tell if it was meant to be serious or not. Like, I thought it was almost a joke, but no, like, Nolan actually directed that with the intention of this character intentionally seriously saying that, and you just cannot believe it. It's just laughable, really.
Yeah, if you're gonna have this sort of like cold detachment from any like character development, just go all in. Don't try and have this like meager attempt at, she cares for her son, and that's like gonna be the emotional anchor.
Yeah, because there isn't. But
yeah,
just because it doesn't, sure, emotional anchors are really important because we are emotional beings. And that's inherently one of the biggest reasons why we watch film or TV, right? We want to be emotionally evoked and relate to these people that go through sticky situations or whatever like that. But like Nolan's films never did that anyway, and they don't really need to do that because the plots are so like big and serious and science fiction and stuff, is that you can't really relate to the characters at the end of the day because they're doing shit that we don't really understand. So it doesn't really matter that much, I guess. So to be like, oh, it's a shit movie because there's no emotional anchor is just like, okay, sure, it doesn't have an emotional anchor, but you know what fucking Tenet really has that a lot of movies don't? Fucking great, stunning visual effects. Like, I haven't seen a movie before where they literally crashed a 747 into some fucking building. This must be the first time it's happened, right? In film, or at least I've ever seen it. And therefore, that's something that, is a great thing about Tenet that not other movies have. So it's always about looking at the pros and cons of different films. And I think the cons of Tenet is shit characters, but the pros of it is that it's got a fucking great visual stunning effect kind of ensemble.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. All right, sorry, we're going to move on to the plot summary now, 13 minutes in. Patrick.
Yeah.
Can you please take us through the plot summary?
Okay. Oh, short plot summary. All right.
Yeah. I'm sick of this fucking long ass shit.
Yeah, no, same.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is real fucking brief.
So, a nameless CIA agent who is referred to as the protagonist is tasked with saving humanity from global threat by the organization known as Tenet. At some point in the future, humanity invents technology that is able to invert objects, effectively making them travel backwards in time instead of forwards. These humans, who are living in a dying world, are attempting to invert the entirety of the world with the device known as the algorithm to prevent their own inevitable demise. Andre Sator is the man chosen by future posterity to carry out the activation of the algorithm, then its burial to seal the world's inverted fate. The protagonist prevents Sator from activating and burying the algorithm by inverting himself to intercept Sator in the past. Sator is finally killed and the algorithm is secured to be scattered across the world to never be found again. It is revealed that the protagonist was the original founder of Tenet, which was founded in the future.
Yeah, fuck, that was pretty short. Literally did not go into anything, but I'm pretty sure that everyone should understand the plot fully, if they're listening to this podcast, because it's got a really comprehensible plot.
If you had to go into anything, you'd have to go into everything is the thing. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
See, so taking the easy approach is better. Okay, sorry. When we were talking about visual effects, there was actually one thing I wanted to say.
Yeah.
So this blew my mind, but fucking, the scene where they fight, like the protagonist fights himself, but one of them's inverted in the airport?
Yeah.
Do you know how they achieve that? Like the filming of it?
No, how?
They literally actually fought each other. They had an actor there that was trained to fight in a reverse manner.
Yeah.
Does that not fucking like blow your mind? Like I just thought that, I don't know, like they edited in like reversed film of someone fighting or some shit like that, right? But upon thinking about it, like it does look really good and doesn't look like it's edited at all. It looks like it's physically happening.
Well,
and apparently John David Washington was like trained in the art of like inverted fighting, which has never been a thing before, but like these fucking coaches and this action kind of sequence shit have been learning to do that for Tenet, and they had to teach him that. So had to like throw punches but in a way that's reversed, and had to catch punches but in a way that's reversed. Like that literally is crazy to me.
Trained in the art of inverted fighting. Dude, imagine like someone came up to you in the street and started fighting you inversely, and
well, that's the thing, like it obviously wouldn't, I don't know if it would work. The point is that you're acting in a way, like all the times they run backwards and shit, it really happens.
Yeah, well,
they're actually people running backwards in a way that looks like they're running forwards, but it's inverted.
Well, that's what I thought they would have done. I think it would have been more impressive if they somehow edited that together, because, as you said, like it looks so seamless.
Yeah, exactly. And knowing Nolan, like he wants to minimize, as much editing and kind of effects as possible, right? Like special effects. So it makes sense that he did this, but I never thought about it until recently. I thought I'd Google it and there was some article and it's like, John David Washington talking about it. I'm just like, what the fuck? Like, that must be pretty difficult.
Yeah, I think Kenneth Branagh also spoke backwards for that scene in the turnstile.
What?
Yeah.
That's fucked. Why? Literally, that is the easiest special effects to do. Like, that's
Yeah, I know.
crazy.
I think they only did it for some of the lines though.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's crazy though. That just again is just it just shows you how much Nolan cares about practical effects.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That call of the three plot.
You got some.
Not gonna like it.
You want to crash a plane?
But not from the air. Not so dramatic. I would have run a jet off the taxiway, breach the rear wall, and start a fire.
Well, how big a plane?
That part is a little dramatic. This is me here.
Okay. What are we talking about?
I've got something.
Okay.
Okay. This film, like, okay, the physics of inversion still kind of baffle me a little bit.
Yep.
So entropy runs backwards. Okay, sure. So if you think about the laws of physics inverted, then a lot of the things still make sense, right? Like, for example, an exothermic reaction becomes an endothermic one. Like the fire
Pretty much all the
creating
laws of
frosting.
physics apply backwards too.
Right, except for gravity for some reason.
Yeah, I
Well,
guess. Yeah.
you know, I guess
not really, but
gravity
sure.
is the same forward and backwards, so you know that still makes sense. So you know, physics. You know, if you're in this concept, that makes sense, except for the fact that sometimes matter is just randomly created when people come in and out of the turnstile.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it makes sense from the perspective of linearity and chronology, but it just fucking creates new stuff.
Yeah. Okay, that's a good point.
And yeah. So, like, take the scene where Neil shoots the bullet back into his gun in the opera house, right? How did that bullet get there in the forward flow of time? Like, I understand it's inverted chronology. It was in a magazine that Neil shot into there, you know, from the perspective of the bullet going backward in time. But where did it go after that in the past? Was it just always there, even when the opera house was built? How did no one notice it? And I think we're just meant to infer that the bullet has always been where it's shot, waiting for it to be unshot. So therefore, at some point, the bullet just materialized in the past, waiting for its journey back into the future.
Yeah, you make a really good point, and I feel like, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, the first thing, yeah, okay, so that doesn't make much sense, because, yeah, you're right. If Neil shot the bullet in his inverted time stream, then, yeah, from the perspective of our normal time stream, the bullet must have always been there before it gets unshot back into Neil's gun, right, and forwards in time. Yeah, so what the fuck? Where did the bullet come from?
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, exactly, right? Like, from our forward time, like, the bullet, it must have just materialized.
That scene where, you know, the exposition scene with that scientist lady and the protagonist is shooting that fucking, the block, you know?
Yeah.
Like, it was almost implying, like, oh, I think she said something like they found this, like, brick wall kind of thing, and that had inverted objects in it.
Yeah, so,
okay, sure. But, like, yeah, your case in the opera house scene where Neil shoots it. Well, yeah, obviously the opera house was built at some point, right? So, what, someone assembled that fucking piece of brick there or whatever, concrete, and there was a bullet in it or not? Like, what the fuck?
Hey, Tony, there's like a bullet hole in this piece of wood. Should we just put it here? Yeah, fuck it, whatever. They won't notice. Yeah.
Yeah, that literally makes no sense. And also, yeah, you're right with the creation of it's not really the creation, and this actually brings me on to something I do want to talk about in a minute, but yeah, you're violating the conservation of energy and matter, right? Like, by having some new person, two people exist at the same time.
Yeah.
But maybe there's a way to explain it with the reversed entropy. I don't know. But the point is, anyway, is that people really go scientifically into this movie, and Nolan himself said, we're not really going for science here. Like, it's not meant to be scientifically accurate. Yeah, there's like a billion YouTube videos where they're like, oh, you know, it's not really accurate if it's reverse entropy, but this and that. It's like, bro, it's a fucking film. Like, stop wasting your breath trying to explain the science behind this, because it's clearly fiction.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's not the first time that's happened. You know, in Interstellar, like, it was marketed as the scientifically accurate movie, and then that pissed a lot of scientists off.
Yeah, I guess. But no, I actually think Interstellar's pretty good. I think it's reasonably accurate, except for the final scene.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, you know, you can't prove what's in a black hole, so it's not actually wrong.
Yeah.
It may not be wrong.
That's a good point, actually. Yeah. If I can prove him wrong, I dare you.
You can't, literally. That's what I mean. Like if I'm pretty sure most of the stuff before that is pretty accurate. Yeah, like the discovery of the wormhole, maybe not, but I'm pretty sure wormhole could be real too. They could be real things. But yeah, like the last bit is completely unprovable. You can't say it's wrong.
Yeah.
It's the beauty of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, what I wanted to talk about is the turnstile a cloning machine?
I don't know. Is it?
Well, it kind of depends on what your view of cloning is, I guess, for starters. I mean, cloning implies that there's two different autonomous, sentient, individual versions of yourself, and they're not the same person. You know, like comparing you and me, like we're different people, obviously. We have different lives, and so do you and your clone. The turnstile doesn't really do that. It doesn't clone you. It simply sends you back in time such that it is still you. So your inverted self that's on the other side of the turnstile window and yourself, they're actually the same people. But ostensibly, it actually does seem like a cloning machine because at that point in time, there literally is two versions of yourself.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a weird situation. Like it sort of is cloning, in a way.
Yeah, I guess you could make the argument for that.
Yeah, because you can actually talk to yourself to some degree while you're inverted, right? Like two versions of yourself. Or even you don't even need to worry about the inversion. You could go back in time. You could go forward in time, invert yourself, then go back in time to some point, then re-invert yourself. And then in that timeline, there'll be three versions of yourself, right? There'll be one that's inverted and two that's not inverted. And then the two that aren't inverted could potentially meet each other and have a fucking normal discussion because they're both forward in time.
Okay.
So
yeah.
In that way, it is cloning.
Speaking of which, I have a question about the plot. So, like, at the end, they go back in time to when Sator and Kat were in that trip in the Philippines, right? And Kat infiltrates...
I thought it was Vietnam.
Oh, sorry, Vietnam. Yeah, that's right. And then Kat is with Sator in the past. So what happens to the Sator that inverted himself in the future? Where did he go?
What do you mean, the Sator that inverted himself in the future? Which Sator's that?
The Sator that is, like inverts himself and then, fucks with he burns the protagonist. That's like the last time we see that version of Sator, right?
Burns the protagonist?
Or like he sets his car on fire.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is the last time, isn't it? That we see that version of the Sator. And then he ends up going on the boat to Vietnam with his wife.
Oh, did that scene take place in the past?
Yeah, but that Sator that we see on the boat is the final version of Sator, which is what I mean by when I say cloning. Right, it's not really cloning. There's different versions of yourself, but one of them has presumably the most experience. It's experienced the most time.
Yeah.
And that Sator on the boat has experienced the most time. It has to because he died. That's his death. That's the end of Sator's story, is a death on a boat. And therefore, that's his last version of himself.
Right. Okay, and then the Sator that has less experience but is
somewhere
in the same period of time
must be
is just somewhere else in the world.
bullshit.
Yeah, okay.
Fucking drinking vodka or something, or cutting people's throats and shoving their balls in them.
Going sailing. Yeah, you know how it is.
Going sailing, yeah.
Okay.
You can't drive a boat like that. The most iconic quote in Tenet.
Okay, speaking of talking to your inverted self, I want to talk about the two-way glass scene.
Okay.
Or like that. What would you call that scene? The
are you talking about the one where Kat gets shot?
Yes.
Yeah. I don't know, the most confusing scene.
Yeah. Okay, so this is weird because it seems like they're both responding to each other and learning information, right? When Sator's inverted and the protagonist is going forward.
Yep.
Even though the conversation should not flow in reverse. So it seems like the conversation is designed so that it could work both backward and forwards. So like if you make a few assumptions that one, Sator is aware that the protagonist told him something, so he could tailor what he asks based on the answers that the protagonist has already given him. And two, that Sator is just kind of feeling it out as the movie explains, because he's interacting with Kat, who isn't inverted, and their movements seem to be pretty well synced up.
Right, yeah.
So, okay. Going forward in time, the Sator's like, you left it in the car, not the fire truck, right?
Yep.
And then the protagonist goes, who told you that? Sator says, tell me now, is it really in the B&W? The protagonist says, I don't know. Tell me or I'll shoot her again. And if you read that backwards, it reads, Sator says, tell me or I'll shoot her again. The protagonist says, I don't know. Sator says, tell me now, is it really in the BMW? Protagonist says, who told you that? Sator says, you left it in the car, not the fire truck, right? So, you see, both ways it kind of works as a question and a response.
Right, wait, and sorry, that's when the forward-traveling Sator comes in and, like, bangs him in the head, right? And then...
Yes.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
And then when he says that, he's like, where is it? And then the protagonist says, I just told you. And then Sator sees his inverted self and realizes that he's about to get the information out of the protagonist, right?
Right.
Yeah. So this conversation is kind of, it's designed to work backwards and forwards, but only kind of. There's a bit like, so Sator inverts himself, and then the protagonist says, it's in the glove box. Sator says, we're going to check this is real. And then the protagonist says, okay, the car, the BMW. I left it in the BMW.
Yep.
And then he shoots Kat. He does the countdown thing.
Yeah.
So he already has all the information he needs before he shoots Kat.
Yeah.
Like from the forward perspective, it seems like he shoots Kat because he needs to get the information, you know?
I agree.
Yes.
That's something I've thought about too. That is very strange.
So yeah, like some of it does work, which I really appreciate. I think that's a very cool concept. But, it only half works is the thing.
Yeah.
If you're not telling the truth, she dies.
I don't know what you're talking about.
You left it in the car, not the fire truck, right?
Who told you that?
Tell me now, is it really in the BMW?
I don't know.
Tell me or I'll shoot her again.
Leave her alone!
I don't have time to negotiate.
Listen to me.
3,
I can help you.
2,
Don't!
1.
What it all comes down to, and this is what I really want to talk about, is this idea of whether you have this free will or not. Because Sator has the choice to shoot his wife or not by that point of time, but he knows that if he doesn't, then he can't get the information out of the protagonist because that was a threat that got the information out of him. But
yes,
but he's already got the information. It's in his fucking head, right? Like his head contains the memories of what's occurred already and has that information, and therefore he could not shoot her. But then you're breaking causality then, because then where did the information come from? That is in his brain,
right? And that's why I say he's just kind of feeling it out, because he throughout the movie he explains that he has this sense about the future.
Yep.
And as if he's more in tune with, like causality.
Yep. I kind of have a theory.
Yeah, what's that?
But bear with me because it's pretty fucking tenuous. And
Okay.
Okay. So firstly, Neil's line and the inverted, and old mate, what's her name? Oh fuck. Kat. Yeah, she's healing up in the fucking sea container, and he says in a parallel worlds theory we can't know the relationship between consciousness and multiple realities. So this implies then that at least some point some fucking person who is making this plot and shit is thinking about parallel worlds. So that is like a possible kind of alternative to all of this, right? Mm-hmm. So I've kind of been thinking about how this could be applied then to this kind of situation. So parallel worlds is usually a method that could be used to resolve a paradox. Mm-hmm. So if we look at and this is one thing I really like about Tenet, is that time travel is obviously a super prevalent thing in film and pop culture. It's not something that's original at all. And this idea of creating a paradox is also not original. I mean, look at Back to the Future or 12 Monkeys or whatever that Bruce Willis movie is called. It's all about paradoxes, right? And the problem with those movies is because traditional time travel, everyone's traveling forward in time. It's kind of very intuitively difficult to sometimes kind of put yourself in the idea of that paradox. I guess the point is that Tenet gives you a really good way of intuitively understanding what a paradox would be like in your case. Right. Because everything happens to you, and I'll get, in this case of the turnstile, you have the ability to create a paradox or not, right? Point is that normally a paradox in like a normal traditional time travel movie would be resolved in either 1 or 2, 3, or there's usually a couple ways that they'll resolve it, right? And one way is that there's some fucking like omnipotent kind of authority that ensures that time is managed and stays on its correct path, and that's super fictional. It's not really grounded in reality at all. And some examples of that would include like the new TV series Loki, or Doctor Who does that quite frequently too, where there's this authority.
The testicle monsters from Rick and Morty, my favorite.
Oh yeah. They beat up the snakes.
Look at you using tools and shit.
And I like the idea of it. It's kind of really cool. Like they're saying it belittles us, to think that like this universe is governed by some like outside authority, and it's a really cool concept, but obviously it's not really grounded in reality at all. It's kind of absurd. The other option is that you can use a parallel world theory, the many worlds theory, where when one does travel back in time to go and kill their grandfather, you actually end up resulting, you travel to a different world, a parallel world where you didn't exist or something like that, right? And in a way that, and then you can resolve that paradox because maybe your grandfather isn't really your grandfather in that world. And that kind of time travel is actually known as Deutschian time travel. It's like this special concept where every time you time travel, you do go to another parallel world.
Yeah.
So anyway, so coming back to Tenet it's very similar to this. There is a paradox going on here. And I guess we should just lay out like a imaginary scenario, you know? So consider yourself, Patrick, walking into a turnstile. And before you walk into a turnstile, you look through the turnstile glass and you see yourself on the other side of the turnstile window. And you're obviously that person, your doppelganger, is inverted, right? He says to you the word one because he wants to. And you record it on a recorder and you play it backwards. And therefore, you now know what he said. He said one. You enter the turnstile. And your inverted doppelganger appears to enter the turnstile, although he's not actually doing that. It's him traveling backwards in time from your perspective. But really what your doppelganger is doing is walking out of the turnstile, right? But you just see him walking back in backwards.
Yeah.
And then you enter the turnstile and then you emerge from the turnstile. And now you have become that doppelganger and you walk out of the turnstile from which you previously thought you were walking back in. Now, it's kind of like weird to think that you yourself previously were looking at your doppelganger and he was inverted, but now you're inverted because you just walked into the turnstile, but you're not really, because in your brain your thoughts are all forward in time. You are forward in time, right, in your own perspective, but in relation to the rest of the world you're inverted. And I guess that's an important point, really. That is kind of an important thing to think about. Now, your non-inverted doppelganger, the person on the other side of the window whom you just were, appears inverted to you, but you know he's not. You know he's the one that's actually going forward in time in relation to the rest of the world. He travels backwards out of the turnstile, and he appears to play something on his recorder, right? And this is very similar to the situation you stated with Sator. This is exactly what's going on, but it's a little bit simpler. And then you remember what happened. You're like, oh shit, yeah, that's me playing the recording of me saying one, and that was me right now. At some point in my future, I've got to say one, right? And you kind of, you could potentially like remember what your role is. You're like, my role now in this play of events is to say the word one. And you know that once he finishes listening to that recording and finishes appearing to record something, then you must have to say one, right? And it almost feels like it's destiny to do that. But ostensibly, you must have free will. It's nothing going to stop you from not saying one. So what happens then? What do you do?
Maybe if you have all this in mind, if you go in with the intention of doing something different, then I don't know, maybe if there is some sort of like force that compels you to do something, you might go with the intention of saying two, but then you fuck up and you go one, oh fuck, and then like in your head or something. Yeah.
And that's actually a common trope in time travel movies, isn't it? Where they try and change time and they can't, and that's like the other option, that time is unchangeable. And again, that happens in Doctor Who a lot, where there's a couple episodes where he really wants to change time, but it's a fixed point and he can't do it, and he tries with all his effort and eventually ends up becoming fixed anyway. What happens does happen. But the problem with that is, again, that's kind of similar to having this like overall authority governing how the world works, and it's not very intuitive. It's not it's a cool solution, but it's not a nice solution in a sense. Like, it doesn't really make much sense. So what if you integrate the parallel world theory into this? What if the turnstile is also transporting you to another world? It seems absurd, but all these theories are going to be absurd anyway. So the interesting thing then is that, so when you enter the turnstile, it seems almost, let's say the turnstile knows which world to put you into. There's an infinite number of possibilities of what you're going to fucking do, right, on the other side of the turnstile, whether you say one or two or not. So you've already seen yourself do something. You've already seen yourself say one previous to going into the turnstile. But what if when you enter the turnstile, you enter a world where because you, for some reason, you're predetermined not to say one because you're so resolute in your decision to be like, nah, fuck fucking causality, I'm gonna fucking say two, that the turnstile then ends up transporting you to an alternate universe where you go in and then you see that your doppelganger isn't listening to a recording, and the events are actually different, but you are in another world where that happened to be the world that that ends up becoming the world that you end up doing, if that makes sense. Like, yeah. And then that would be like then the case of not having free will, where the parallel world is already kind of determined what you're going to do. But the problem with all of this is that you still have that memory in your head of what actually happened, and that's what fucks all this around. Is that this memory, your consciousness is aware of what is going to happen, and usually that doesn't really happen in time travel or parallel world theory. You're not meant to know that you're in another parallel world.
Right. Okay. Yep.
So I guess that would be like an interesting kind of thought experiment, I guess. Like, or it is an interesting thought experiment. Like, what if maybe that is what's happening? And in the case of Tenet in this film, the characters all just happen to do what they're meant to do. You know, that everything goes the way it should. But what if you and I wanted to do something different? We wanted to break the flow of time and causality. Then maybe that's the solution to it. Maybe the turnstile does send you to another world.
That's an interesting thing because, like, you know, like you could make the argument that like you breaking the causality is still itself like the causality, like because you see yourself do something which compels you to do something else. But, you know, like you seeing yourself do something in the first place, you know, it compelled you to fucking break that.
Yeah.
Which could have always been the case, you know what I mean?
And I guess that's why there's an infinite number of parallel worlds where there's an infinite number of possibilities of what you decide to do. And the one we see in Tenet is that we always just have the consistent world where the characters do what they're meant to do, which is kind of in some way, like, there's an interesting sublimity to that, like the idea that this is a story and the characters are predetermined to what they like. The characters are predetermined and what they're going to do is predetermined, because at the end of the day, this is a film and it's a story and it's written by someone, and these characters have no choice but to follow what the writers have done.
But like, you know, also if you're a character in this world, like you don't want to create a paradox anyway. In fact, you're compelled to, you know, do what you think is going to happen because you don't want to create a paradox, because that would like fuck over the world, you know.
But there's always going to be some people that be like, nah, fuck that. I want to create a paradox.
yeah.
No.
I suppose not in this story though.
But yeah, it's just an interesting kind of thing to think about, I guess. It's just another discussion on paradoxes and free will, I guess, but it gives you a little bit more of a obvious understanding of it, because this scenario that I just laid out to you makes complete sense. You know, it's easy to understand, and that's kind of what the beauty of this kind of time travel concept is.
Can I go back to sleep now?
No, I thought of something else.
Great.
This reversing the flow of time. Doesn't us being here now mean it never happens? But we stopped them.
Optimistically, I'd say that's right.
Pessimistically?
In a parallel worlds theory, we can't know the relationship between consciousness and multiple realities. Is your head hurt yet?
Yes.
Try sleep.
I've got one more thing quickly. So this film has some meta commentary about itself in the same way that Inception is constantly bringing attention to its form. So in that movie, in Inception, you know how it draws a lot of parallels between dreams and filmmaking? So while you're watching it, the puzzle is what we're watching a dream, or is it just a cinematic technique to build tension? And so similarly in Tenet, there's a layer of engagement that extends outside the movie itself. The YouTube channel Implicitly Pretentious has a great video on Tenet where he talks about how we should value time as an edited experience. So much like how the title of the film is a palindrome, so too is the film, kind of.
Yep.
The ridiculously complicated nature of this film means that to fully experience and understand the story, you have to go back in time, as in start the film over again, and watch it with the new knowledge that you've gained of Neil having been sent back in time by the protagonist, which kind of like reframes, you know, like the beginning scene and what you think of the events of the film, and, you know, which leads to discussions like the one we just had. When at the end, when Neil was like, oh yeah, it was you who sent me, it's not, you know, it is like this, it is like a beat, it is like a kind of revelation, but it's not really that dramatic, I feel, because he's not really drawing attention to it, because the point is, you know, like that you're meant to go back and rewatch this film. The structure of this film, or sorry, like rather the meaning of this film is that you have to go back and watch it again, pretty much.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get, yeah. Well, I mean, it's the same with Interstellar, actually. Because the start is determined by things that happen at the end. It's a time travel thing, right? Like where when he ends up at that NASA facility, he gets the coordinates from the dust, which he did in the black hole. So I guess that is very similar too. It's a very Nolan thing to do. Okay, cool. Anything else?
Nope.
Before we finish up, I think we'd like to apologize for not uploading anything for like God knows how long. Well, actually, that's a lie. We uploaded that YouTube, the retrospective like a week ago. So. But still, we haven't done any actual film podcasts in a while. The last one was Casino Royale, and that was quite a while ago, actually.
It's good. It feels good to get back into a film.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, it's nice to have a break and then get back into it. You reignite that passion.
Hell yeah.
So, do you have any recommendations?
I don't know. Yeah, really complicated time travel film, Primer. I think I've mentioned this before. But yeah, I've been, since I saw this yesterday, since I saw Tenet yesterday, I've been keen to rewatch that movie, trying to make sense of it, because, you know, the buzz around that is that it's kind of like the most complicated time travel movie there is.
Primer?
Yeah.
Interesting. I haven't seen it, but that sounds really good. I want to watch it now.
Yeah. If
you want a weird time travel movie, it's an alright film. It's not great, but the film Predestination is an interesting time travel film. It's the time travel itself isn't actually that complicated to understand, but actually the character and what happens to him time traveling is really interesting. And where can people find us?
People can find us on Spotify, YouTube, iTunes, SoundCloud, and Stitcher. We have a website, amttm.com. You can find our Facebook and Instagram links through there. If you have any questions, queries, insights, or criticism, send them to mail@amttm.com.
Cool. And next time, we are doing 2001 A Space Odyssey.
Okay.
Yep.
Let's do it.
Patrick only just found that out.
No, I'm keen.
Executive decision. Yeah, I watched it the other day and man, it's so good. What the fuck?
Yeah.
Like seriously, considering how old it is, it's beautiful.
I've only seen it once. So yeah, I'm keen to revisit it.
It's just such a beautiful movie for how old it is. Yeah, cool. So we're doing 2001 A Space Odyssey, our first Kubrick film. Thank you for listening, and guess we'll see you next time.
See you later.